Okay, perfect. Oh, let's see. Can you guys hear me? Does it work? Is everything visible? Perfect. Nice, right? Okay, let's check. Let's check this. Okay, let's check. Let's check this. Perfect. Привет всем. Bok svima. Today we're gonna look. Hey y'all. Nice. Welcome everyone. Today is gonna be like the third part of the series where we examine Istomin's Bukvár primer from the 17th century. Before I start, I should actually say, I want to say thanks to several different people because all of this wouldn't really have been possible without them. First of all, as two Greek people that I want to thank, it's Julius and Leonidas. Thank you very much for helping me out. Thank you for being patient with me, simply because my Greek is pretty much non-existent. So these guys have been absolutely insane and have helped me out immensely every single time when I had a question, even at like 1 a.m. They were more than happy to help me out. So thank you very much. Furthermore, I want to thank several Russian people, part of Rusko Shkola, which is Ilya, Alexander, Nikolai, Neapol, and Irina. Several other people as well. You know who you are, but they've been immensely helpful every single time when I had a question. They actually took like many hours out of their day to help me out with some translations, old Russian stuff, and it's been absolutely insane. So thank you guys so much. This really wouldn't have been possible without you. I don't think most of the Russian people are actually watching this because they're pretty busy. It doesn't really matter. Just thank you. That's what I wanted to say. So let's go. This is gonna be good. I have time for some more memes, and let's start. Leonidas, if there's something that I pronounce wrong way, or if there's something like a mistake that I make relating to Greek, welcome, dude. Cześć. So if there's any mistakes, please feel free to just correct me and write down in chat how I should pronounce it or something like that. So let's go. Let's go. All right. Today we're going to cover 5 different letters. Basically, last stream I said, so it's going to be a bit shorter because last stream it was like, or first stream was like an hour and 40 minutes. Second stream was an hour and 50 minutes. Today I'm going to aim for like 1 hour simply because I still have some stuff to do. But let's just start. So there's going to be 5 different letters, and the first one we're going to cover is the letter L. And does anyone know what this letter was called, right? Because this letter wasn't called L or L. It had a different name. It had a Russian name, Old East Slavic, Old Cyrillic name. So it used to be different, right? So does anyone know this? Exactly. Oh, привет, as perfect. So this letter was called люди, right? And it meant people. So every single letter in the Old Cyrillic alphabet had a name which actually meant something, right? So the letter L was called люди, which meant people or persons, right? So different forms, like we always have. This is the Greek one, Greek form. The funny thing is that we actually don't see the Greek name for this letter. In all of the other words, or letters, I should say, usually the Greek letter or name is included. This one doesn't include it, which is lambda, right? Letters are also numbers. Exactly. So all of the letters actually had numerical values as well, which is pretty interesting. Same thing with Glagolithic, by the way. So Glagolithic numbers. The funny thing is that Glagolithic numbers and Cyrillic numbers actually don't match. So they're pretty different. One uses the Greek system while the other one uses a Slavic system. But okay, let's start. So the first picture, this is a pretty easy one. This is actually Lev, right? This creature, which is a lion. Same thing as in Russian. It didn't really change. So this will stay the same. Then we have one which actually changed. And this is a pretty interesting one because Russian actually has a lot of different words of saying this. And what is this? This is a loge, right? And this is actually a bed. Modern Russian uses two terms to refer to a bed. You have pastel, which is a Slavic word, and you have kravать, which also means bed, but it actually comes from Greek, right? So let's try it. So that would be kravatos, which actually means like a couch or a mattress. And it eventually came to mean bed. Southern Slavic languages also have this term, krevet, like in Croatian, which probably comes from Ottoman Turkish, and then Ottoman Turkish took it from Greek. So loge is a dated word. People don't really use it anymore. But it meant bed. And then we have the next one, which would be ложка. So this is the same as in modern Russian. This just means a spoon. Didn't really change. Then we have the next one, which is lilia. This is a flower, a lily in English. And this name actually also comes from ancient Greek. And that would be lerion, I believe. And that actually has a huge etymology. So if I remember correctly, this word, lerion, actually comes from Egyptian. So it comes from Coptic, and then it comes from Egyptian, and it comes from the word khert, and that actually means flower. So in Egyptian it meant flower, and then it got absorbed and taken over by Coptic absorbed it, and then Greek absorbed it, and then eventually it came to be used in Russian. That's at least what the Wiktionary page offers. So I hope that's correct. If not, feel free to the guys feel free to correct me. And then the next one would be this one, which is also a pretty interesting word. So this word is actually also from Greek. It's not a Slavic word at all, and that would be lention, right? So the accent is on this one, so lention. Actually, not lention, but lention. And this also comes from Greek, and it actually comes from lention, or lention. And in ancient Greek, this basically referred to anything that was made from linen. So this could be a scarf, this could be a towel, this could be something else. Basically, if it was made of linen, one of the words to refer to it basically was called lention. And this was absorbed into Church Slavonic, like a lot of other Greek words. And it came to represent, or came to signify the word palacience, which is towel, right? So the church word, or church Slavonic word of saying towel would be lention, right? So the other one, we have luk. So actually in Russian, this is pronounced like luk. They don't have difference in pitch. So it's luk, which is just a bow, same thing, didn't change. And then the next one would be liestvitsa. And this is actually an interesting one because in modern Russian, people don't refer to this thing as liestvitsa anymore. They actually change a letter. So it becomes liesnitsa. So the V sound actually turns into an N sound. This is actually pretty interesting because several sources, several research papers actually point this word out and say that this is one of the examples, or one like proof basically, that this wasn't the first primer that was written, and that Istomin, so the writer of this primer, actually looked at another primer, found another Church Slavonic primer, and basically copied it, a Southern Slavic church primer. Because Southern Slavs still use this term with a V, not with an N sound. So in Croatian, for example, we use ljestve with a V sound, and the diminutive would be the same, right? So ljestvica. So this is actually pretty interesting. So this is a Southern Slavic version of an otherwise East Slavic word, which is pretty common. Next one. This is an interesting one. So this would be a kind of barrel, right? Or a vessel. The etymology of this word is kind of unknown. I remember looking at this. Asked some people to help me out. So we don't quite know where this word comes from. So that would be lagvica. And lagvica, one of the options, is actually that it comes from Latin. And it comes from the word laguncula, I believe. And that would be like a small flask or a small bottle. When you look at it like laguncula, maybe it's related, maybe it's something Greek. We just couldn't find where it comes from. But in Russian doesn't use this word anymore. It basically stopped using it at a certain point, and they have the word sosud or korchaga, which basically is a kind of vessel that they use. Nowadays, people don't even know what it is, because vessels, what is it even, right? You have different types of vessels. Well, back in the day, you had a lot of different types of vessels, and all of them had a different name. And people knew how to distinguish them. Nowadays, people just call them by one thing. So the next one would be this one. Actually thought this word came from Greek, but it doesn't. So this actually ladia, ladia, my bad, ladia. And this is actually a boat. And there's an archaic Russian word, and that would be ladia, which also referred to a boat, specifically like a river boat, right? So a small boat that could pass or float on the river. But there's actually a second Russian word, which is much more common, and that would be lotka. And lotka is the modern Russian word of saying boat, at least a small boat, right? Ultra Slavonic also had a word for this, and that would be ladzi. Maybe what happened is that the Old East Slavs basically copied this word because it was a more prestigious form. I don't really know if that's the case, but it explains why it exists. And then we have this thing, which is the same thing as in Russian. So just as a reminder, this letter, which is sh in Russian, during this period, it was still read like sh. So we're going to read this like leshch with a tvrdy znak. So leshch, and this is still a fish. It's called a brim in English. It's a type of fish. And then we go on, and this would be luk as well. So in Russian, there's no difference in sound between luk and luk, one being a bowl and the other one being an onion. So the vegetable that you eat, right? Other Slavic languages actually distinguish between the two. I don't know about Polish. Maybe Krzyk can tell me about this. But in Croatian, what we do, luk has falling pitch, so a long falling pitch, while luk has short rising. So that's the way we distinguish between these two objects, or these two things in Croatian. Serbian obviously does the same thing. I don't know about Slovene or Bulgarian, but I know that they don't use pitch. At least Bulgarian doesn't, Slovene does. So maybe they do the same thing, but I'm not sure about Polish. So yeah, I think, wait, let's see, was that everything? Lapata. Lapata, this would be the same thing as in Russian nowadays, right? In Croatian, this would be lopata, and that would be a spade. So this didn't change as well. Lopata. Something else, I actually listened to the other stream, and one of the things I noticed was that I mispronounced a lot of different things. That is, so during this period, especially Church Slavonic words, right? I mean, if we were super puristic, onion and bow also wouldn't be different. But the thing, if we borrowed cebula, as onion from Italian. So in my region, there's actually word capula, right? Or capula, depends on where you want to place the accent. And that's also the Italian word. That's also being used. That's pretty interesting. Is it like cebula in Polish? So, what I said was that the church standard, if you write an O, you pronounce it like an O. In modern Russian, this is not the case. If it's not stressed, you reduce it. So, lapata, right? So the O turns into an A. So, but in this text and in old text in general, you would still use it as an O. As an onion scientist, I'm happy about this topic. Nice. Yeah, right. So, let's go on. This is going to be the interesting part and the difficult part. So, люди в согласии, so this will be people in, are agreeing with each other, probably. Согласитесь, right? Согласие. So people are agreeing. Добрые, so this is the old form of good. Бывают. So, probably when people agree with something, they're good. As in, they're good people. в любви, in love, жительство. So in love, and жительство would be like a residence, right? A place of living. So in love, in love residence. В людях устрояют. So in people, устроит. Устроит is like to settle down or to create, right? Строить. In people, create. So this would be in love, residence. In love, residence, in people, create. В любви жительство, в людях устрояют. So when people, or when they are at peace, where there's love for your fellow man, you can create, people will create a place of living, probably. I think. So ладью, прави. So ладья was boat, right? And then прави, to create or correct. И себе самого. So create a boat. And себе, to yourself, dative case, самого. So to yourself, yourself. To yourself, yourself. I think it's just living together, not residence. That would make sense as well. Living in harmony, maybe? Ладью, прави и себе самого. So only you, льву, не являйся. Okay, so льву, that's лев, right? So don't pretend to be a lion. Maybe, yeah. Don't pretend to be a lion без оруженного. So I remember actually talking about this phrase because this is kind of complicated. So без means without, right? Оружен, оружен. This means armed, right? But nago usually means naked, right? Yeah, exactly. So nago means naked. It comes from nagoi. So this would be I don't know if this would be like approach. Maybe don't act as a lion if you're weaponless and naked. As in, don't pretend to be someone you're not without backing it up. Maybe I'm taking it too far, but that's what I gather from the sentence. Life suggests that we're useful. Exactly. That's perfect because there's a lot of lions in Russia, right? So this is perfect. No, it would have been lvom, не являйся. Don't show yourself. That's появитесь се. That's a different case, like lvom не являйся. Yeah, exactly. So this would be лещ. So that's the fish. И лук, ясти. So to eat the fish and the onion. So the interesting thing is that the actual etymology of the word есть would mean that this would be written with a yat, right? Because it's jest, not yast. But Ultra Slavonic, usually, at least in a lot of different words, when the first letter is a yat, so iye, they actually wrote iya, so yasti instead of yesti, right? So eating the fish and the onion is luka streljate, so shooting from your bow. This is pretty self-explanatory. So eating the fish and the bow, not the bow, and the onion and shooting from your bow. Лествицею, so this is the instrumental case. So with a ladder, je, which is like an intensifying particle. Лествицею je. So this is a titlo. Blag, which is good. Chod, as in your path, your gate. Sotvoriate. So climbing or going with the ladder, probably climbing the ladder, right? having a good, being on a forward, justified, good path. Sotvorяте. Stvorit. Sotvorяте. Hod. Sotvorяте. Tvoriti. To create, maybe. Ljestvicaju že blag hod sotvorjate. Interesting, making together. That's actually making together. That would make sense, right? So, as in a ladder makes your path, create a good path. Like a ladder, not like a physical ladder, but you have to climb the ladder, right? Yeah, you make yourself a way with a ladder, but not a physical one, but like climbing your way through life, probably with the goal of reaching something higher, right? A higher power, because this is probably about theology as well. That would make sense. So then we have loshka, which is like a spoon, right? Chaos is a ladder. Interesting. Chaos is a ladder. So loshka, which would be a spoon, and then lention, which would be полотенце, right? So that would be okay, na dobie. So nadoba, that's necessity, right? So in necessity, tvorятся. Tvoriti, to create. Oh, so like using a spoon or creating a spoon and anything made from silk, like a towel, in necessity created. Plagiate a Russian primer. What a turn. So probably a spoon and a towel used in necessity. And then we have lagvici, polny. Lagvica. That was this thing, right? The vessel. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't spoon. Exactly, you're right. Loshka. I didn't even notice that. Wait, maybe loshka means something else then. Wait, let me check. I think, oh, I didn't even notice this. But you're right. So the thing is, a lot of times the zh gets reduced, right? You don't say ложка, you say ложка. So that would make sense. There's actually quite a lot of mistakes in this primer, but we're going to cover them later. So anyway, Lention, Medvet. Lagvici polny, so polny is filled, right? Full. So these vessels are probably full. Piti, so to drink. Пригодятся. Okay, that makes sense. So these vessels, filled vessels with drinks, probably makes drinking easy. And then we have lilia trava. So the trava means as in grass, but it can also mean a plant in general in Old Church Slavonic. And so the plant of a lily. I think they didn't write such word very often, so maybe there was no standard way to write it. Probably. So this is an interesting one. So we have the plant of a lily, right? Цветом. So цвет in Russian only means color. But in Old Church Slavonic, it actually meant flower. So this could both mean flower and color, right? So the plant of a lily, color, preizriadna. Zriate is to look. Preizriadna could be like to be looking at the flower, probably. Lilia trava, цветом, цветом, preizriadna. Could also be like izradit, like to finish something, to complete something. Yunoshi не дей. Preizriadna is from izriadne. considerable or good even. Seton. Sizable, fair. Interesting. Is rich in color. Ah, that's nice. It would be plentifully is rich in color. Nice. And then we have Yunoshi. So this is a young person or a kid. Не дей. So дей comes from деять, which is the old Russian word of saying to do, which is archaic, it's not used anymore. Like делать is the modern one. So young one, don't do. Грехов. So that would be with sin, дела, смрадно. Дела is things, and смрадно is a stench, right? So, Yunoshi, this is the vocative case. So, shortly after this period, actually, the vocative case disappeared, which is kind of interesting. So, don't do bad things, as in sin and things badly. I don't think this means stench in this case. I just think it means bad, as in. Oy. Okay. I think we can go on to the next one. This is actually one that contains a mistake. So you can also see this picture. This is the thumbnail, right? This is the one I based it on. It's beautiful. So this one actually offers the Greek word. And the Greek word is written like an M with an eta. The problem is that it wasn't written like this. So by this period, Greek had a lot of different ways, just like it does nowadays, to write the letter E, or the sound E. One of them was the iota, which we already covered, looks like this. One of them was the eta, which looks like this. And one of them was upsilon, which is written like this. In ancient Greek, this sound was an U, like in French du, or in German. But in modern Greek, actually, from like the, 12th century, something like that, this sound disappeared. So it turned into the E sound. That's funny because this guy, so Istomin Bukvár, or Istomin Karion, he actually spoke Greek. There's several sources that claim that he was actually fluent in Greek, including ancient Greek. But he still makes quite a few mistakes because to him, probably, all of these letters, well, they all were all pronounced the same way. So you have to learn by heart which letter you had to write. Nowadays, there's a new vocative case forming in Russian. So about that vocative case, the old Russian vocative case is very similar to the one other Slavic languages have, that still have it. And that slowly started disappearing in the 18th century. So the old Slavic vocative case, if I can put it like that. But from the 1850s, a new vocative case started forming. And that is what they call vocative number 2, right? Electric Boogaloo. So this vocative case is pretty different. A good example of this would be, let me think of something. So mama, right? Mother. If I were to call my mom in Russian, I would say mam. So I would drop the final A sound. So what happens, for example, if you take the word Sasha, like the name, and you would call this person, you would call them Sash. Because the new vocative case, what it does is basically skips the last vowel and leaves the consonant. So Sasha turns into Sash. Mama turns into Mam. You have a lot of different names that end in vowels. The thing is, Russian actually use a lot of diminutives. So a lot of masculine names, they end in consonants in Russian. But what happens is when you use a diminutive form, they actually end in vowels. So when you use the new vocative case, every single name, everything basically changes. So you skip the last vowel and you only leave the consonant. That's the new vocative case that's forming in Russian. There's actually a lot of people that want to classify it as a vocative case, but the Russians themselves don't. It's not official, but it's pretty official, if I can put it like that. So this is a mistake, right? And there we go. So let me just see. Perfect. First word, that would be miecz. and this is the same thing as in Russian. This is a sword. This word actually doesn't exist anymore, if I remember correctly, and that's moshna. Oh, moshna. And this is actually a purse, but not a purse as in a modern purse, but this is like a sack, right? In Russian, this would be called a mieszok, and it's like a sack or a bag in which people used to store money. So they used to store their coins because they were quite heavy and they didn't want to carry it on them, so they used different bags or small pouches. So in modern Russian, for like a purse, you would use bumazhnik, but at this period, those didn't really exist, so it's called moshna. And then this one, which it's kind of hard to read, but it basically is manisto. There's a version of this word with ka at the end. Moshnaka. Moshnaka? I didn't know that. So this thing, this is pretty interesting. So this is actually monisto, and this comes from Old Church Slavonic, and this is actually a necklace. And this necklace is a traditional women's necklace that wasn't only worn in Russia. So it was also worn by the Greeks, only by women, and it was usually made like of pearls or coins or beads. And it indicated social status. So the more this necklace cost, you can just say coin pouch. Yeah, exactly, coin pouch. That would be a better way of putting it. So the more this necklace cost, the more or higher your status was, right? And then we have this one, and this is mohor, and this is a fringe in English. And Russian, funnily enough, actually uses a longer word. Mohor isn't used anymore, but they have bakhroma, and this actually comes from Turkic, and it's bakhroma in a Turkic language, and in Arabic it actually comes from mahrama, and it means handkerchief. And but in Russian it meant a fringe, which is like the bottom part of like curtains or anything that can make it pretty, right? Little fringes. Moshonka, and it's a ball pouch, I would say. Men usually have it. And then we have miera, which is a yat. So miera actually has two different meanings. It means measurement, but it also is a unit of measurement. So during the Old Russian period, miera was actually a unit that was used, and it was a unit which was around 26 liters. So if one miera would be, a volume of 26 liters, which was used on markets and basically selling and buying different things. So there's a lot of these old Russian or old Slavic units of measurement. One of these is versta, which can still be encountered in like texts from the 20th century even. Vyorst, I believe. And one vyorst is like a kilometer and something. There's like set expressions in Russian, if I remember correctly, which uses this word, and they're still being used, but no one really uses the measurements anymore except people in villages. But it's a pretty interesting unit of measurement. And we have the next one, which is from Greek, which is Mitra. And this actually comes from Greek, and it comes from Mitra in ancient Greek. And that is like a metal guard worn around the chest, or a girdle. But it also meant headband. It had actually a lot of different meanings, one of which was also like a bandage. But in this case, it specifically refers to like a headband, which is the Christian like headdress, and it's part of the liturgical vestment. And this thing is called a mitre in English, which is extremely similar to the Russian and Greek words. It's used for like ecclesiastical purposes in churches, both in the Eastern Catholic or the Eastern Orthodox Church as the Catholic churches, and the Eastern churches as well, like Armenia. Then we have Medvet, which is the same thing as in Russian, but this one used the yat, obviously, because of etymological reasons. So this would be bear. And then we have an interesting one, which is mysh. And mysh, the interesting thing is that in Russian, this is actually a feminine word, right? So it's written m-y-sh miehki znak. But in this primer, as you can see, miehki znak isn't used. and they use the yer, which is tvrdy znak. So in this primer, mysh is actually a masculine word. So I checked this, and in Old Church Slavonic, this was also a feminine word. It also ended in miehki znak. But what happened probably was that due to Southern Slavic influence, probably Serbian, because in Bulgarian it's mishka, I believe, but in Serbian and in Croatian, ruska. So mysh in Croatian and in Serbian is actually a masculine word, which makes sense and kind of shows why this was written with a yer. So the funny thing is, as a person who studies Russian, not a native speaker, but a Croatian native speaker, it was also funny to me when people would conjugate the word mysh in a feminine way, because to me it's a masculine word, right? So probably what happened is that he used some kind of Southern Slavic resources in which mysh actually was a masculine word, which is why he used the yer. So the next one would be mreža, which is a dated Russian word. They have like meroja, I believe. Like there's some colloquial word or some regional word that uses that term, and it means a net, right? But nowadays people in Russian use set or setka to refer to a net. So this is the old word. A few words back, but I'm slow. I recall Mitra is also given by God in Persian, like Mithridates, god of kings, was chosen by God. So religious heteros makes sense. I didn't know that Mitra is also given by God. The thing is, I don't know if Mitra and Mitra are related, because the Greek word is written with a t, not with a th sound, like with a theta, right? So maybe these two are related. If they're related, that would make sense. Mithras. So, the last one, that would be, so this is actually also very difficult to see this. So, mravi. So this is mravi, and this would be ants. In modern Russian, this word isn't used anymore. They actually use muravye, and the plural, which this is the plural, would be muravi, which is written with a v miehki znak I. So m yer I. So this is actually Southern Slavic forms that was used, which makes sense, right? Because it was more seen as more prestigious. And then we can go on to the text itself. Yeah, exactly, that's written. Sergey, спасибо тебе большое. Muravi. So, the text itself. Мысли Yunoshi. Okay, I cheated and checked Wikipedia. Mithridates is the Greek attestation of the Iranian name Mithra, giving. Okay, there you go. Russian still has the remnants of this word with murashki. That makes sense. Как еж. Nice. So, мысли юноше. So, think as an imperative, young one. И пиши мыслете. And write the name of this letter, the letter M. Kako by жити? How would you live? Excuse me. В благом тебе лете. In good to you dative year. So how would you live? In good through the years, probably. To you years. Now we have Mitru zdje nasят. Mitra, right? This is the matter. Zdje. So this is the old form of zdесь, meaning here. So here people wear nasят. So wear this mitre. Чести достойны. Okay. So честь is like honor, and достойны would be worthy. So people here who are worthy will wear this garment, right? And then this sentence. So mecha or mecha, bayatsa. So as in being afraid of the sword. V mierilech zlobny. So people, где, zde. So people who are afraid of the sword. Actually, I wasn't even the person who realized this. I think it was Ilias who did that. Basically, he told me that this means like people who are afraid of the sword, or you should only be afraid of the sword if you cheat in life, as in vmierilech zlobny. Mierilech zlobny means probably the people who are like selling different things, and if they measure that something is like 800 grams or 800 grams, but they want to sell it to you for a kilogram, right? I remember that was the analogy that he gave. So you only have to be afraid of the consequences if you cheat your way through life, which is a pretty heavy thing to say, but it makes sense. Не только медведь, so not only the bear, но в мреже и люди. Not only the bear, but in the net there is also people. Грехом ловимы. Грехом ловимы. Caught, as in... So not only the bear, but also people will be entangled in the net of sin. Right? Ловимы, ловите, ловить. To be caught by the net of sin. Ты опасен буди. So ты, you, опасен, this can actually mean two different things. Sword was used in language as a symbol of the state. Oh, that's actually, I didn't even think of that, Sergey. That's perfect. Sword was actually a symbol of the state. So you have to be afraid of the state, or basically the consequences as well, right? The consequences or the state if you cheat your way through life. Ты опасен буди. So опасен can actually mean two different things. Usually it means like perilous, right? So to be dangerous or perilous. But it can also be aware, to be watchful of something. So be watchful not to be entangled in the net of sin, probably. Буди, to be, or future tense. Then we have mravi, в труде, si. So ants in, this would be like labor, trud, effort, like effort or label. Si is yesi, probably, you are. Денег полнит мощный. So денег, money. Деньги, which is actually interesting. Деньги isn't like a Slavic word at all. Деньги actually comes from, I believe it's like Mongolian, something like that. Денег. It's and actually first time it was attested was like in the 12th century, something like that, when the Mongols invaded Russia and conquered everything and made tributaries of all the Russian principalities. This word was attested for the first time. Excuse me. Полнит мощный, right? And that would be this one. Мощно. So to fill your pouches with coins and money. Мышь. So look at this. This is interesting. So look at this form, right? We have мышь with, isn't the C the short form of себе? Мрави в труде себе денег полнит. So the thing is, in Old Church Slavonic, si was also used as yesi. Ты еси. This form isn't used in Russian anymore. So you are. I don't think that si was used as себе. Ся was as себя, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this was used. I don't really know. The only form that I know would be the like еси form. Денег полный мощный. So this would be мышь with a мягкий знак, so ер. I'm talking from my experience from Bulgarian. They use the short dative pronouns as possessives. These, Actually, let me check. I'm gonna try. I think it could also be like filling your pockets to yourself. It does make sense, right? Wait. Let me check this. Let me Slovak this. Haha, funny. Русский. Все. Название один из музыкальных звуков. 7-я ступень основных. Это нет, наверное. Подожди. Си себе. Себе си. Bulgarian. Myself, yourself, reflexive, oneself. But that could be like se, right? Ся, maybe. I think this could be very Balkan. Говорит, что си указательная частица присоединена к слову для ее значения. Ends in its own work. That would make sense. Like, that actually would make sense, yeah. I don't know. I'll have to skip this one. Let's skip it for now. So we have mysh. Otherwise, it's going to be like 3 hours. So we have mysh, yer. But in this, it was written with a yer, right? So yer, yer. So he cannot make up his mind what to use. So this is the feminine form. Mysh, da, which is a typical, as in je. I don't think si in je. Or do you mean something else? Da would be the typical Southern Slavic word, as to, in order to do something, right? Just very present Ultra Slavonic. Не проезд. So I remember asking about this. So проезд could actually be eating through something, although есть, as in to eat, есте, or есть in Russian, was actually written with this letter, right? With this letter instead of the yat. So, but this is probably to eat through something. So in order for the mice to eat through something, ukradut, so to steal, все, everything. And this is the old form of night. So it was written like noshch. That was also Bulgarian has this form, but I believe it's archaic as well. So nochny, so at night, probably. And then we have monista, mohor. So look at this, right? So mohor, mohor. So monista, mohor. So the fringes of this this necklace, this expensive necklace, людям по украсу. So во украсу. So to people, this is ukras, right? So this is something to show, as in something to make something else pretty, right? Во for ukras. Not to show off, but basically. Maybe he used mysh and mysh for different genders. Seems convenient. It does, but I don't know if, like, other words don't usually do that. Like, I don't think, for example, if you want to use rak, right? As in crayfish in Russian, you don't use rak or rak if you want to use a different gender. But maybe. Okay, so следуй, so follow, right? Учащим тебе добру глаз. So this is again a Southern Slavic form because it was seen as more pure, more prettier. So глаз, this is golos in modern Russian, and that would be voice. So this would be like follow the good voice that teaches you. Yeah, that makes sense. I think we go on to the next one. So in this case, we have the letter N. And does anyone know how this letter was called, or what it was called? Because it wasn't called N, but it was called something else. And the Greek version is actually correct. But the funny thing is that the Greek version, the iota, is actually written with 2 dots, right? Which wasn't really done in Greek. So this is like half Church Slavonic, half Greek, which is funny. Exactly. So this is called nash, and nash means ours. So this letter, which is why you see a woman and a man, they're holding hands, and this is ours. And then we see the different forms. This comes from Polish, different cursive forms, and the Church Slavonic form. On the different words. So let's go. I would say that there is krysa and krys, but ending is obviously different in this case. Yeah, rat, right? Yeah, that would make sense because they use a vowel. Well, technically, yer is also a vowel, At least it was in the 12th century. But I have never really seen an example of something like that, as in where yer indicated a feminine word and yer itself indicated like a masculine word. I haven't seen that before. Would be interesting though, actually. So first one, nosilo. So these are pronounced like oh, right? So nosilo. So this is actually a stretcher. And Russian, if I remember correctly, doesn't use this form anymore. R letter R comrade. Though this like Bukvard, this is a meme. Like this whole thing is a meme. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So nosilo. So this is a form that isn't used in modern Russian anymore, right? So they actually have a different word, which is nasilki. And that is a stretcher. Like if something happens to you, the ambulance comes and they put you on a stretcher. So this is a primitive stretcher, obviously, because it's from the 17th century, but this is what it looks like. Probably a reed and some wood. And then we go on to this thing. And this is called nochvy. And this is like, you can still find these in villages. You don't really find them in cities because they're not needed. Monty Python of the 17th century. But that's perfect. I love that analogy. That's literally it. So, nochvy, which is like an undeep. It's like an undeep, thin, but a white trough, right? So they used this to bathe children and for kneading dough. So if they wanted to make bread, they took this thing, nochvy, they took it out. It's pretty huge, actually. It's not like a small thing. It's a pretty huge trough. And some of these troughs were used for horses, but these ones, at least to feed horses, but these ones were specifically used to make bread. And the modern Russian word for this is kapite. Kapite. Копите, копыте, наверное. Просто не знаю, как это произносится. But nochvy is the old word. And then we have this one, which is the same thing. I think it's pretty obvious what this is. So nos, or nos in Russian, this would be nose. Then we have naga, which funnily enough, in Slavic both means a foot and leg, right? And then we have a noj, which is a knife. And this animal. So this animal is actually pretty funny. Natapir. And as you can see, this is actually written with an A. Modern Russian doesn't do this. Modern Russian actually uses a ye here, even though it doesn't pronounce it like a ye. That's the funny thing. So natapir, this is actually a bat. And there is another... There's actually another way of saying this, and that's letucha mysh, which again, mysh, right, which is a flying mouse. And the thing is that Croatian has a word for this, and that's shishmish. Shish comes from like Fledermaus, I believe, it's a calque. Comes from German, shish, like the sound. And every single time when I tell a Russian person, it does sound like a Pokemon, right? So every single time when I tell this to like a Russian person, they start laughing because shishmish sounds pretty funny, right? Shishmish. So it's like zhuzhать that we had 2 days ago. So shishmish natapir. So the modern version is different. So I think that's it basically. Da. Dobro. So let's continue. Nash напишет, so this is the T, напишет кто. So nash, not as in us, but the letter nash, напишет кто, writes the person who, и в приятельстве знанства. So, and in приятельстве, so this is like to be an acquaintance or a friend, right? Друг, приятель. Kishmish is dry grapes in Russian. Oh, I didn't know that. Kishmish. There's this other Russian word that I love. It's izum. It sounds adorable. It's like, I think it's like dried grape, right? Izum. So, и в приятельстве, so in friendliness or in, to be an acquaintance. And this is znanstva. In Croatian, znanstva means science. Russian uses nauka. But this is probably just to know, right? So to know when to write the letter nash. I don't think this actually refers to friends but that it's positive to know when to write this letter. Then we have dusha, внебесна, so dusha, or dusha in Russian, which is the soul in sky or celestial. Небесна, like nebesno, right? So it's related to the sky. Спешися, гражданство. Гражданство is like a citizenship. Спешить is also a modern Russian word, and it means also to hurry, right? To do something quickly. So to quickly receive citizenship, your soul will quickly receive citizenship in heaven, probably, or in the sky, right? Yeah, izum is like full dried, and kishmish is half done. Nice. I didn't know that. So this would be Bog, or Bogu, the old pronunciation, titlo. Bog nash везде си. This is a very archaic way of writing, by the way. So Bog nash, like instead of Bože nash, our God, addressing God, spieshitsa, to enmount from a horse. One heaven passport for me, please. Spieshitsa, as, thank you, to descend. I didn't know that meaning of the word. Spieshitsa. Okay. Bog nash, везде си. So везде means everywhere, same thing as in Russian. Si is actually an old archaic form of быть. Sushi, right? Sushi or sushi in Russian. S-U-Sh-I-Y. Si is actually the old version of this, the archaic one. And then всех, yat, so everyone. Blag, good, as in very good soul-wise. Исполняет, to fill, right? To fulfill. So everyone, God, our God, is everywhere and will fulfill everyone and provide everyone with the good. Человек, person. Спешить come from пеши. Pieshi. Wait, let me check. Pieshi. Unmounted. Interesting. Есть здесь гражданство всех исполняет. Interesting. Good, I think. So, человек умом, so person with his mind, right? His mind, his way of thinking. Через. So this is again a very archaic form. In modern Russian, this would be через, through, nos. Okay, so nos, through his nose, обондяет. So обондяет would be to smell, right? But in this case, this actually refers to a passage of the Bible, and that would be Genesis 2:7. And if I just grab my Bible, this is actually Genesis that's being quoted, and that would be 2:7, which reads, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." And that is what's being quoted here, although it's kind of, shortened. And there's obviously there's a Church Slavonic version of this as well, which бы «И созда Бог человека перст от земли, и вдуну в лице его дыхание жизни, и бысть человек в душу живу». That would be the modern Church Slavonic version. And it basically talks about breathing or giving the breath of life through the nose to the people. And this breath of life can be, described as the conscious, or like as consciousness, or a man's consciousness, right? Which in this case, I'm not sure, but I think is being described as umum, right? And then the instrumental case. So umum, with the mind. I think at least. That's how I looked at it. Maybe there's a different explanation. So the next one would be zdrav, zdravu, kto nogama. So zdrav in Russian, modern Russian, I actually asked Grisha for this, so I also want to thank him because he helped me a lot. Actually, a question connected to the Bible. Is glagolithic really used in churches? In Croatia sometimes. So the situation glagolithic in Croatia is incredibly sad. First of all, it's not a mandatory subject. Second of all, it's actually not taught in schools at all. There's several schools that offer glagolithic, but they're only present in the bigger cities. My uncle actually works, he's the director of a school, and they don't offer it at all. It's only the bigger places that offer it, but it's only if kids want it. Most kids are not interested. In high schools, obviously it's not being taught. In elementary schools it's being taught. About the churches themselves, so the glagolithic situation in Croatia is really sad. Even ecclesiastical usage of glagolithic. What happened is that glagolithic used to be the standard. This got changed. It became Latin around the 14th, 15th century. Latin stayed the standard until something like, when was it? Like the 19th century? Something like that. But there were several churches in Dalmatia, so on the coast, that refused to make the switch. So they never switched to using Latin. They simply refused to because they said that the old Slavic writing system, as in the system that was that Croats were supposed to use, was glagolitic, right? And the interesting thing is that because of this, they actually received a lot of backlash. There was a lot of backlash, especially from the north, because the ecclesiastical or church center of Croatia center was in Zagreb, Agram, right? The German name for the city, Zagreb, which is the old name. But they kept using it. They just didn't care. They kept using it until like the start of the 20th century. And then a change happened. And that was that most of them actually switched. So there's a few churches, like just a few of them, that still use it sometimes. Barely. Sporadically, and most of these churches are actually located on the islands. They're not even on the mainland. And the situation with the islands is incredibly sad as well, because the dialect Čakavski, as we call it, is actually dying out. No one really wants to learn it anymore. Kids are not learning it, but those churches sometimes still use it, especially on like big celebrations like Velika Gospa, stuff like that. They still use glagolithic. The interesting thing is, I should actually say glagolitic because there's no th there. But one of the interesting things is that these churches that do use it actually don't use it, don't pray in Latin. They use Church Slavonic. And they're the only churches in Croatia that use Church Slavonic, because Church Slavonic is usually associated with the Eastern rites, as in Serbian, Bulgarian, Macedonian. Croatia doesn't really do that. Everything is in Latin. It's kind of sad that that's the case, to be honest, but glagolitic and Church Slavonic basically go hand in hand. I read about it, and obviously they use the Croatian pronunciation, so I doesn't exist, it's I. Mjehki znak it's not being used. Palatalization, as in t, r, doesn't exist. There's a lot of sounds. D doesn't exist. F doesn't, as in th doesn't exist. Ižica doesn't exist. Just, it's basically archaic Croatian, if I can put it like that. Like, for example, so bješe, right? So they would use the imperfect, or they would use the aorist, or something like that instead of the modern form, which would be like biloje or something like that. It's yeah, it's pretty sad. I hope I answered your question with that. Actually took a long time to answer it, but okay. So zdrav kto nogama. So zdrav actually has two different meanings, right? The modern Russian meaning actually means sane, as in the opposite of insane. And Grisha gave me an example of this, and that was zdravaya мысль. So it doesn't mean healthy way of thinking, it means a sane thought, right? Sane way of thinking. But in archaic Russian, Old East Slavic, and in Church Slavonic, the primary meaning of this word was actually healthy. In Croatian, we still use this. Zdrav means healthy. So healthy is the person who, with his legs, nogama, so instrumental, будь bolnu nosilo. Будь, will, bolnu, like боль, pain, nosilo. Будь, will, bolnu, nosilo. Who can bear the existence, maybe? Здравствуйте. Nota nogama zdol. Nogama. Кто nogama? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Насила. I don't know about this part, to be honest. It's pretty complicated. Будь насила. Let's skip this then. So ножем не, so this was a mistake. Не держай. So with a knife, don't hold. So don't hold a knife. В требу он есть дело. Треба. Treba, it's like a right, right? Or need. A right, a sermon, or a need. He is the thing. Ножем не держай. В требу он есть тело. Where can I? Yeah. I don't know. Does anyone know what this means? Healthy man can bear pain, illness, on foot, like without laying in a bed. That's perfect. Well, very well put. Da. Oh, the person who is healthy can bear anything. Those small corrections written about the letters are almost cute. Reminds me. Oh, wait. Furigana is like when they use, when they write kanji, but then they write hiragana on top of it, right? If I remember correctly. I studied Japanese for a little while. I forgot most of it. So, noche v dom. Okay, so let's skip this. We have noche, which is this vessel, or I mean this trough. V dom, возьми. So take this trough at home. Возьми, to take, right? В требстве пригодятся. В требстве пригодятся. Пригодятся means like to come in handy. Ножем не держай. So, noche. So this trough at home, take it at home, and whenever it's needed, it will be handy, right? Ножем не держай. So, no topiri, že. So I think this is a reference to natopir or netopir, I believe in modern Russian. But shortened form, right? So, but this bat, intensifying particle. Oh, this is zlob, but pronounced as zlob. This was anger or spite, in order to истребляться, истребить, which is like to eradicate. So, but bats, intensifying spite in order to exterminate. Okay, this doesn't make any sense. Does anyone understand this? No, теперь же злоб да истребятся. Истребятся. My Arab friend was impressed by Titli because it's similar. So Arabic uses diacritics, right? To like they use symbols for long vowels, but they use diacritics when they do, and they barely do. Do you speak modern Russian? A little bit. I could speak Russian, kind of. Broken Russian. I'm not fluent. Then we have где ли, идеши. So где ли, so где, right? So where, question mark, идеши. where do you go? Смотри, it's смотреть, to look at, где, where, суть is to be plural, наши. This makes sense. Bots are evil and must be destroyed. That sounds like a game, but it does make sense. So, где ли идешь, смотри, где суть наша. So, wherever you go, look for our people, right? Look for people who are similar to us. Смотри, где суть наши люди. And then we have блаженство. So, look wherever our people are in bliss, right? Because our people are good, basically. Рая села ваше. Рай, which is heaven. Села, which is... so this isn't сидеть, which means to sit. Ваши means yours, as in you, plural, of you, actually. Raya. So the villages of heaven, or your villages of heaven, they will be, if you find your own people, I think. Иди, идешь и смотри, где суть, наши люди, блаженстве, рая, села ваша. That makes sense. Села. So, yo doesn't exist during this period, but if this would be like села, right, then it would be written with a ять. Because сидеть has a ять. I think. Okay, I think this is going to be okay. Let's move on. We covered 3 letters in an hour and 15 minutes. Just modern spelling. Okay. So, letter O. I have another drawing. So, the interesting thing is, right? Села и веси. Села. Села. Село. Yeah, that's it's a different. Wait, села would be, yeah, plural, of course, would be plural form. Makes sense. So the interesting thing is that the old Russian script, right, actually has 2 different ways of writing the letter O. And we'll only cover one of them, but this is omicron, right, in Greek. So that's this letter, but there's actually a second letter that was used to write the letter O. And we're going to find that one. And as you already might know, that's omega. So this is actually not omega. Wait a sec. Yeah, so this doesn't exist. Let's just take this, which is the omega, right? The Greek. So in ancient Greek, omega actually had an O sound, like a long O sound, while omicron was an open O, right? A normal, like it wasn't long, basically a short sound. And the thing is that even though they only cover O, they actually cover omicron as well. So omicron and omega are both covered on one page, which is kind of strange because they're 2 different letters. But okay, so we have this form. So this is obviously the O. This is the omega form. This is the one you will encounter most often. This is a very special one. Like if you take a look at text from like the 12th century, 13th century, you'll encounter this letter a lot. Also in the 16th century, when the standard starts changing, writers become more liberal and they actually start making new different forms. This one becomes very popular. So you see the cursive forms. And now we can actually find another mistake. And I don't know if someone can point it out, actually. So there's a mistake in this, right? This spelling. Does someone know what the mistake is? Can someone point it out? I'll give you like a few seconds. I don't know if you can read Greek cursive. Bursa. Leo, don't go ahead. Write it down. Someone. I didn't even notice it. I was looking at it, I was like, wait, is this correct? I, Omicron. Yeah. So the funny thing is, Az actually said it, is that, there you go. So first of all, there's actually two mistakes, right? So the first one is that in ancient Greek, this actually wasn't one word, but this was two words. So the O was actually separate. O, and then it was mekron, right? But let's disregard this one. This is an eta, right? And this eta wasn't written in the Omicron. Like, it was never part of the Omicron. So Pursa, or Leonidas, basically told me that what happened probably was that the writer was thinking about mikros, which means length in Greek. And length is actually written with the eta. If I can put it like this. So this is the eta, right? And this is iota. So Omicron should be written with the iota. Omicron, right? Oh, mikos. Oh, my bad. And not mikros, that's small. Mikos, which means length. So that's the mistake, which is kind of, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because both of these letters are pronounced like E. There's actually a third letter and a fourth, and but yeah, look like a P. It does look like a P, but yeah, that's not a P in cursive. But yeah, it does make sense. And the omega is actually written correctly. So this is correct, and then you have different forms. This actually looks like a face, now that I think about it. I didn't even see it. So let's go on to the words. This was a whole mystery to figure this out, because it's very hard to see. As I said in last stream, if you guys heard it, one of the ways of writing the letter V was actually a rectangle. It was just written like this. You'll encounter this in a lot of different texts. Why? Don't ask me, but it just happened. So Greek is E heavy, exactly. So if you look here, I thought this was like O something od, right? So there's a titlo od, but it turned out to be ovod in during this period, ovod or ovad, and that's a horsefly. So these little dots are horseflies, which are pretty annoying creatures. If you live like close to a meadow or something, you'll probably have encountered them and have animals, and they're incredibly annoying. And then you have different ones, and this is actually another mistake that we can find. So if I zoom in, this looks like O6, right? Rectangle A. So this turns out to be osva. And when you think about it, osva isn't a word in Slavic, right? It doesn't exist in Proto-Slavic, it doesn't exist in Russian or any Slavic language. But there's another word that kind of looks like osva, and it flies and it can sting. And that's osa, asa, modern Russian, right? So why did this writer write it with a V? We don't know. I read an article about this, and basically the lady stated that this was just a mistake. The funny thing is that he actually makes this mistake twice. So not only once, but he talks about it a second time. Osva. So this is probably not a mistake at all. Like, this is intentional. So maybe there was like a different form, a more prestigious form, that in which osva was more prestigious than asa. Is there any chance that the va is some kind of suffix? So usually in Slavic I would say yeah, but in asa I don't think so. So actually asked several people if this was a dialectal form. They all told me no. Maybe this is like a very regional thing. What you should imagine though is that this guy was close to Smolensk, I believe. So that is close to Ukraine nowadays, right? So I checked Ukrainian words and I couldn't find it. Wasn't even present in Proto-Slavic. So I don't know, maybe this was a regional thing that, you know, at one point stopped existing. But it's a pretty interesting word, right? So what is this? That would be a wasp, right? And then we have ovca or avca in this case, and that would be a sheep, same thing as in Russian. So now we have an interesting one, which during this period would have been pronounced as osiel, right? Instead of asiol in modern Russian, and that would be a donkey. very hardworking creatures. And then we have another word which isn't used in modern Russian anymore. And that is this word. And can anyone read this? Actually, let me ask you guys if you know what this is. Maybe it was a slang of that generation. Don't think that's a mistake. Yeah, it probably wasn't a mistake, because if it was, he wouldn't make it twice, right? Maybe like if it was a different language, sure, but it's definitely Slavic. So it probably was some kind of different form. Exactly, Sergey. Ovoshnik, yeah. So this word, I found something related. Okay, cool. So can you share it? Basically, ovoshnik. So what is this? Ovoshnik is actually a grocer, and this word doesn't exist anymore. No Russian person ever uses this. So this is another rectangle V form, right? So this is a grocer. Russian, if I remember correctly, I actually asked about this, doesn't have a single word to refer to a grocer anymore. Probably because it's not that common, right? So the thing is, ovoshnik, so it's actually on the second syllable, ovoshnik, see? Ovoshnik, because of the accent on this one. So the accent probably shifted, but during this period it was ovoshnik. And what happened was Russian doesn't actually have a word for this right now. They basically said, so someone who sells fruit or vegetables, ovoshi, right? Vegetables. Yeah, you can send it to me on Discord, Leo. So it's продавец в овощном магазине, right? So basically a seller in, oh, I meant in contemporary Russian, yeah. Thank you. So basically a seller. So someone who, not a seller as underneath a house, but продавец, right? So someone who sells something. There's actually a Russian word, which isn't Russian, it's actually Turkic. And that is Bakaleshik. Bakaleshik. If someone can correct my pronunciation. I've never used this word before. Bakaleshik. And it actually comes from Arabic. And this word used to be very popular because it was a grocer, but it eventually fell out of use. And it comes from Arabic bakal. And that's the k sound that it has. And it means vegetable. So just man selling vegetable, right? So this is a very archaic word. Then we have the next one, which would be this animal, which is oriel. And in modern Russian, this would be ariol, right? Which is an eagle. So same thing, just yo instead of ye. And then we have this structure. This is a very interesting form. So this is actually a r. So organi. So organe. And this is actually an organ, right? In churches, you have these musical instruments. This is the plural form, even though there's only one of them, which is kind of strange now that I think about it. And organe, which also means organs, excuse me, actually comes from Greek. So it comes from the Greek word organon, which means organ, and also the musical instrument, like the tool. Basically, osva is the thing in Proto-Slavic according to two things I found. Shared them both in the Discord group. Awesome. I'll take a look at them later. Thank you so much. Evcharisto. So, then we have the next one. Oralo, which is a plow, right? So, I actually looked at this word, and it turns out that Russian doesn't really use this word anymore. They use a different one, which is pluch, or pluk, I believe. And the funny thing is that's actually a Germanic word. So Russian abandoned the Slavic word and they started using the Germanic word. And this is something that actually happens a lot, especially in the 18th century. So when Peter the Great comes to power, he changes a lot of Slavic words, and a lot of Slavic words or otherwise unknown words become Dutch or German. According to Muravkin translation, modern ovce comes from Wasa. Interesting. So another example I could give you is galstuk. So galstuk actually comes from Dutch, halstuk, which there's a lot of different sportzaal, right? Comes from sportzaal, En ploeg is exactly mem. Jij snapt het waarschijnlijk. So one of the languages that they took things from basically was Dutch. So you have a lot of Dutch words, a lot of German words, a lot of French words. Feuerwerk, right? Vuurwerk. You have a lot of different Dutch words. So if you speak a little bit of Dutch, you'll probably зонтик, зонодек, да. Вообще об этом не думал. Но это тоже правда, да. Интересно. Ну, дальше, наверное, просто следующее слово будет око. The interesting thing is that око, right, isn't used in Russian anymore. Only in set constructions. Because the Russians, at some point, started preferring a different word. And that word is glaz. Croatian, English, Russian, Slavonic, anything you can speak. I think that's about it. I actually really want to learn Greek. So I should probably do that. But Leo doesn't want to teach me. So, I mean, I will just blame him, right? I think that's the easiest way. Just blaming someone else. So basically, oko, the interesting Greek. So the interesting thing is, for what people in Czech, can someone explain what's going on? Do you guys just enjoy Russian linguistics? This is very interesting. I don't know about the other guys, but I love Slavistics, languages in general, not only Slavic languages. So examining this text is actually very interesting because it merges a lot of different features. It merges Greek, it merges Church Slavonic, it merges Russian, it merges Southern Slavic languages. It's insane. So I remember someone asked me like, why do you like it? Because everything is in it, right? Every single language. We're in that section of YouTube. I mean, you can watch gameplay, right? You can watch some guy streaming, or you can learn about Slavic linguistics. So basically, you have oko, right? So in a lot of Slavic languages, oko is still used. For example, in Croatian, my language, we still use oko, right? I'm a Russian learner from Belgium. I've always been interested in Slavonic. Nice. So, also the ASMR voice. Whose voice? So the modern Russian word for this would be glaz. And glaz, I always thought this was from Latin, like it was a French word, but it turns out that glaz actually is a Slavic word as well. I never really knew that. So it kind of changed. There's some set expressions that still use it, but most of the time people will just say glaz, right? Then we have the other one, which is okun. And okun is a fish. Oh, it's a perch. That's a type of fish you can find. And then we have a very interesting one. And so we have ocular. So ocular, right? Itachi, glad I could make it. Welcome, man. Welcome, man. So oculare. So oku, you can see eyes. But this word actually doesn't come from Slavic at all. It comes from French. So in French, you have the word oculaire. And that word comes from Latin, ocularis. And ocularis is means eye in Slavic, right? I'm looking over to the stream. Funny enough, they were speaking about Hebrew and Arabic in very interesting languages. So this is actually an archaic way of saying glasses. So modern Russian doesn't use this anymore, right? They don't say у меня окулары, что-то там случилось. They use очки. Очки, which comes from очи, right? So очки. Ocuляри sounds very archaic. But let's go on to the text itself, because an hour and 30 minutes. So, before I leave, actually, at this part, I would say, what's the name of the Slavic letter? Does anyone know? Because it's not called O or Omicron, Omega, it's called, what would that be? Exactly, perfect. So this letter is called on, and on means he. And the funny thing is that in older texts, it can actually also mean it, not only he. Oko is a very old, yeah, exactly. Oko is a very, very old word. So I don't know, I don't speak Ukrainian that well, but oko, I believe they prefer oko, right? They still use that form instead of the Russian word glaz. I think Polish had to do something with it as well. If I remember correctly, probably. Well, I was learning Russian at uni. Nice. So, давай. Пойдем дальше. Значит, он зри оком мелесным. Телесным, боже. So, он, he, зри, зрить, which is the archaic Russian way of saying to look, смотреть, right? Оком, with eyes, телесным, so тело, so related to the body. So he looks with his eyes and his body, probably. How letter names are so funny because all letter names are also something letter. Ah, nice. I didn't know that. Letter word pairs. So in. So look this up. So in is actually an Old Slavic particle that was used to express force, but it can also mean inni. And I remember covering this in the group, and some people actually said that this refers to the future, right? Inni, something else. So we can see this. Vye and then titlo k. So viek. Viek means century or time period, right? In viek on мысль умным. So, express particle, time, he, смысл, which means like the meaning, умный, smart. Lots, if not the majority of languages have the same name for letters. Yeah, like in Phoenician, bet means like house, I believe. So he looks with his eyes, and then maybe this relates to the future. In viek on мысль умным, right? Then we have очки очам. So to the eye, so dative. Очам, to glasses, to the eyes. Книги же intensifying article. Книги, plural of book. В пользе, суть, разумным, right? So разумным means rational or clever. Разуметь means to understand. So usage, суть, means essence, or it means you plural, he, she plural to be, они суть. В пользе суть разумными. So if you wear glasses, they're only useful to the person who is actually rational and clever. So to the people who are rational and clever, they can actually use очки to read books, right? Oh, Manel, kako si, brate? Isto dogodi. So, Orlova. Okay, Orlova, which is related to the eagle, right? Is zriestvo. Oh, this is interesting. So this is actually a very archaic Church Slavonic form. So in Russian, you have the verb iметь. And iметь means to have. But Russian doesn't use it as я имею. Brate, dobro sam. So, иметь, Russians don't use it as я имею. So in Croatian we do this. Russian uses the construction у меня есть, in me is, right? But Old Russian does use this. So, and they also use a different form of the verb. So, иметь becomes имать, which in Southern Slavic would be imati, right? So you have imать. And one of these forms would be yemli. And yemli is a form of imать, as in you have. So the eagle, which is zriestvo, so the ability to look, probably has. So it has the ability to look, right? I never memorized how to call them. I always call them soft sign and hard sign. So the soft sign is called мягкий знак. And then you have the hard sign is called tвердый знак. If you want to use the traditional names, which is what we use, you call them yer, which is the soft one, and yer, which is the hard one, right? So, ovce, which is ovce, so these animals, right? Sheep, смирение, so peace. Смирение is also humble or like humility, shows humility or peace. Tvoj, so your mind, na oslu, so your mind on na on the donkey. Стирай. Стирать means to clean, right? Tvoj, стирать, or to remove, maybe. Does someone understand this? Tvoj. на ослу стирай. В книжно учение. So this makes sense, right? Learning, учение, книжно, so book, relating to learning from a book. But what would this be? Not only clean. But this also means to erase, right? Твой, на ослу стирай. Maybe someone could shed some light on this one. Then we have Yakuo, which is a typical old word. So как, осел, so осел, so like the donkey, здесь, всяко, every, душа, soul, не, not, ленися. So like here, every donkey. So like a donkey, your soul shouldn't become lazy. Ленися, right? Вземши, это, наверное, как взять, like to take, орало, take the hoe or the plow, в деле, so take it and do something with it, not only to abrase. Nice, спасибо. Из млада, so from your youth, молодой, right, is the form that Russian uses. The Southern Slavic form would be mlada. Трудися, трудиться, so do your best, right, to practice, to do something successfully. Then we have окунь. Окунь was the bass, like the fish. В воде, in the water. Поймаешь, so this is поймать, Russian, that would be to catch, right? So catch the fish in the water. На одре поспеши. So, do you guys remember that there's 3 words to say bed, right? Turns out that there's 4 words to say bed. And one of these words is adre or adra. Actually, I think that the Russian word is odr. So Russian doesn't like consonant clusters ever. Which is the reason why mleko becomes malako and stuff like that, right? So odr, you can probably understand why they didn't want to use it. So odr is the archaic way of saying bed. Pospishi. So perfective form of spать would be to sleep. Po trebie, po trudzie. Trud, like trud, like to works, trud. How would you translate that in English? As in, Russian has plenty of consonant clusters. True, but Russian doesn't like words like vrt or krk or stuff like that. They just don't like it. So trud, like to put energy into something, right? Sladka, which is sweet, right? Splode. So plod is actually fruit, right? Or something that a plant creates. This could be a vegetable or fruit, basically what will eventually turn into a fruit. Ovoshnik, excuse me, that was the grocer. Not as much as Czech. Still, Czech sounds very interesting, just like Polish. So, uzrishi, right? So to look, so the grocer looks at the fruits of the sweet fruits of his harvest, of his energy, right? He put energy into this, so he tries to harvest it. And uzrishi probably comes from zriet, or which means to look. Okna, which is again okna means window, right, in Russian. Also used in the northern parts of the Balkans, by the way. Чувств, so feeling. Stregi, so стрегать means to whip, right? So okna, чувств стреги, like the window whips your feelings. You open the window, maybe. Открыть. Don't quite know. Does anyone know what this would be? These streams are getting longer and longer. This 1 hour, 40 minutes. One thing to go. Стереги. Стереги. Стеречь. To guard. Oh, perfect. You're right. Thank you, Sergey. That's, you have to guard, right? The window of your feelings, as in, that sounds pretty weird, but like to guard it. And then we have ovod, so these horseflies, osva, so these wasps, right? Wasp, there you go. Ne dokuchit. Okay, so dokuchать means to annoy, right? So that these animals won't annoy you anymore. Exactly. So we have умен человек, titlo, right? Shortened form. Умен человек, всем благ. So a smart person is thankful or grateful for everyone and everything. Yakuo, which is как, organ звучит. So a person who is good in his soul, in the way he acts, will sound like a musical instrument, will sound like an organ. Actually, very well put. It sounds beautiful. Because everything will function, so the actions that he produces, everything that he does will actually sound like a musical instrument. Very poetic. Last part, guys. I promise this is going to be the last part. So, two people, and we have the word but, or the letter P. And this letter was called pakoj, or pokoj in Old Slavic. Pakoj means peace, or mir. What we covered many times is that in Russian there's actually two words for this. You have mir, which usually means world, but during this period it also meant peace. Actually, it still means peace, but you write it in the same way, right? So, подожди. So, mir, as in peace, was written like this. Oh, I cannot draw here anymore. So with this E. Organs in Russia at that time. Though the thing is, they probably have, because Westernization actually started before Peter the Great. He did most of it, but actually I read an article about this quite some time ago. Words like feuerwerke, right? Most people assume, or they basically said, that these words only got introduced when Peter reformed everything. Well, we have proof that this happened beforehand. So there's actually some like books that mention these terms before Peter introduced them. He probably popularized them, but I'm pretty sure they, like in Greece, right, in the Byzantine Empire beforehand, they had these musical instruments. So I'm pretty sure they probably got exposed to them at some point. Maybe not the common folk, if that's what you refer to. Okay, so yeah, exactly. There was probably only a few of them, but let's cover this. So we have P, Polish versions right here. Then we have the Greek version, which is written like P. Excuse me, and the Cyrillic ones. And now we are going to cover quite a lot of Greek words. So Russian still has this word, and that's palata. Palata. Excuse me, palata. But in modern Russian, palata means a room in a hospital, right? Like different, how do you call them again? Like a ward, I believe. Different wards are called palatas, right? But in archaic Russian, palata actually meant palace. Basically any huge building. This is still the case in Serbian. Serbian still uses this. In Croatian, it's palacha. But in Serbian, it's palata, I believe, or palata. So basically, monkey creature is meme-worthy. Oh, we're going to cover it, man. You're going to laugh. So basically, this means castle. And where does it come from? It comes from Greek, obviously. And it comes from palati. And that means emperor's palace. And the funny thing is that Greek itself actually borrowed this term. It borrowed it from Latin, which is the case with a lot of Greek words, actually. And it comes from palatium, which is emperor's palace in Latin. And in this case, it meant palace or chamber. So even something like komnata, right, in modern Russian, chamber or room, could be called palata in Old Russian. Let me go on. Pero, same thing in Russian, pero, which is a feather. During this period, it could also meant paladin guard. So it could also just mean pen, but pens didn't exist, so everything, you know, everything with a feather was called pero. So a bird has pero, but also the utensil that you use for writing. We have this plant, and this is called pelin. And in Croatian, this would be pelin. And this is a typical, if you're Slavic, you're gonna know this plant because your grandmother probably makes tea of it, and she gives it to you when you're sick. And you're not allowed to boil this plant because you will destroy everything that's inside it. It's a very medicinal plant, and it's been used as medicine for many hundreds of years, even thousands of years. Like the Romans used this plant for its medicinal purposes, or medicinal qualities, I should actually say. So the English word for this, like they obviously don't use pelin, is Artemisia, I believe. But they don't usually make tea out of it. Like, I know that Slavs do it all the time. I don't know if it's very common in Russia, but I know that in the southern or in the Balkans, like everyone has this plant and you put it everywhere. You even put it in your food. Usually this plant is pretty bitter. It's actually also part of the French cuisine. So it's a very useful plant, right? Then we go on to the next one, which is, if you take a look at it, you can actually see that it has a letter that isn't present in modern Russian, and that's the letter th. So this was plintha, but the th didn't exist in Slavic, so it was plinfa, right? Plinfa. Where does it come from? Well, if you see the th, like this symbol, right? You can, oh, not use nowadays that often. Okay. You can actually assume that it's from Greek, because only Greek had that sound. Zdravo, Bog. So, plinfa, it actually comes from Greek, right? It's plinthos, which means brick or squared stone. It was very common in Russia during this period, at least the term. Like a lot of old documents actually use this term, and especially when cathedrals or churches were built, they were like, people would call these bricks, these building stones, right, these parts would call it plinthos. So, exactly, Sergey. So the modern Russian word for this would be kirpich, right? Kirpich, and it means brick. And pozdrav na Međuslavenskom. Odlično. Dobrodošao. So the funny thing is that that word isn't Slavic. So kirpich actually comes from Turkic, because probably when, I don't know, when the Mongols invaded or something like that, they took it. So another word that actually looks like this is the Russian word plintus, which is still being used, and that's actually a baseboard. And for people who don't know what that is, if you have a wall, right, the bottom part of the wall that is connected to the floor, sometimes there's this like wooden strip, right, this little part for decorative purposes. Sometimes it also protects the wall. That part is actually called a baseboard. By the way, the Russian word probably comes from Greek, plintha instead of archaic, plinthos. Okay, thank you. Flint in Dutch. I didn't even know that. That was a Dutch word. Nice. So, baseboard, plintha. Now you know it comes from Greek. Now we go on. This word. This is still very common in Southern Slavic languages. In Russian, this isn't really used anymore, but you can. So it's pierstin, right? Which means something that you put on your pierst, which is finger. Nowadays, pierst isn't really used in Russian. They use palец. But pierst was the old archaic way of saying it. Modern way of saying ring would be кольцо, which funnily enough actually comes from the word колесо, which means wheel, right? So because it looks like a wheel, a ring, it makes perfect etymological sense. Then we have poyas, which means belt or girdle in this case, which you would wear around your piece of clothing, right? Let's go. This one, well, you can see that it looks fancy, so it's probably gonna be Greek, right? So this is potir, or potir, because it's a year. So this comes from Greek as well. And it comes from potyrion, or poterion, from potir, which means cup, and pino, which means I drink, as in I drink from the cup. And it means chalice. So because it's associated with religion, because it's fancy, you know it's going to be Greek. And nowadays, this is actually still being used, but only for ecclesiastical purposes. So I don't think anyone ever will call this thing potir in Russian, modern Russian, that is. They're very archaic things. So then we have this thing, which is Pugovitza. And for Russians and Russians who joined, they'll probably understand that this is Pugovitza, which is a button. This doesn't really look like a modern button, but for the boyari, like these nobles, they had pretty expensive clothes, so even pieces of clothing like little buttons were very expensive. So they look like this. Here we go on, which is Parus. Parus, again, Greek, comes from paros, I believe, and it means like a large piece of cloth in ancient Greek. But in Russian, it came to be known as a sail. So in modern Russian, even Parus means sail. Even though they have several other words, they even use a Germanic one, but this one is very common. Then we have pushchai. So this is a firearm that's not used anymore. This is from the 17th century. And nowadays, in English, you call it arquebus, which is like an obsolete matchlock firearm that you have to light and you have to fill with gunpowder. Strelci. You probably know that term if you play EU4 or if you have Russian banners or if you read old documents. Strelci are these specialized Russian troops. Strelять means to aim and to shoot, right? They had these weapons. They were incredibly effective and they were eventually reformed or reformed under Peter the Great. It also means hand cannon, by the way. And then you have ptice, which is the plural form of ptica, which means bird. And we have two things left. Let's cover this one first, because this is Slavic. We have prasha, or prashcha. In Croatian, this would be prachka, and that's a sling, just a weapon, primitive weapon. And then we have the meme, this animal. So what is this? This would be an ape, right? Pistol came a long way from Czech. Pištel, which is a cognate of pišel. Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's nice. First regular flying trip in Europe. Nice. So this is an ape, a monkey. But modern Russian doesn't use this term, right? Modern Russian uses обезьяна. And the funny thing is that the word обезьяна isn't Slavic. Обезьяна comes from Persian. And I sadly don't speak Persian, but it's like buzine. Buzine. I butchered it probably, but it's Persian. So there's actually a different way of saying monkey, which comes from, you guessed it, Greek. And this word was used during this period. And that would be pifik. And pifik, because you can see it, p-i-th-i-k, right? P-i-th and then yer, like tjordy znak. And it actually comes from the Greek word pifikos, which means ape or monkey. So they basically copied the Greek term for this. And then we can go on. It kind of just looks funny. We can go on to the last part. We have pokoj, ot. So this is the combination, right? OT, omega tjorda. Pokoj od truda. So peace from or after labor, basically. Всякому, to everyone, dative, есть знате, знате. So to everyone is to know. So that покой, so after work, you deserve peace. If you read old documents, you'll encounter this word a lot of different times, and that's егда. Егда будешь. So егда actually means когда. So егда, когда будешь, when will you be? И пером писате. So, and with instrumental case, with a feather or a pen, you will write. Parus, so sail. Желанный. Parus желанный. So желанный would be like desired. So the desired sail. Людям в добро pushchai. I remember asking about this. So людям, to people in good, pushchai. So what does pushchai mean? Well, there's actually two different ways of looking at this. Pushchai can actually, one of the explanations could be that it comes from Old Church Slavonic, puhati, or pushi, like the imperative form, which is dуть in modern Russian, and means to blow. So the sail of desire will blow us into the right direction, to the good direction, right? The other more probable way is that pushchai actually means puskай. Отпускать, пускать, that means to let, right? So the sail of good will let us or allow us to go into the right direction. That's most probably the right explanation. And then we have palatu, so a dative of a palace, serca, so the palace or a beautiful house, so the palace of your heart, genitive, of post, so post is like fasting, right? The fasting period, тело, body, usushai. So during fasting, your body will dry out, which sounds pretty rigorous, right? Привет, me. Привет. Как твои дела? Высушай. Стреляй. So стреляй. It's not only to shoot, but it also means aim. Стреляй ко Богу. So dative to God. So aim for God, as in through your actions. Aim to God. Мыслею твоею. So with your thoughts. With your thoughts, you have to aim towards God. Он опояшет. Опояшет. Oh wait, wait, that's like опоясать, right? He surrounds силою своею. So he surrounds us with his force, probably. He's everywhere. Drugi slovenski pozdrav za tute večer. Bog, dobrodošao. Čistatu. If someone knows a better translation, please. Upoyaša. That makes sense. So then we have čistatu, which means cleanliness, right? В любви. So čistatu в любви, cleanliness in love. Pugovitza застегнет, наверное. Застегнет. Застегнуть means to fasten, right? Pugovitza means the button. So the cleanliness in love, the button will fasten, right? And then we have another very archaic Old Church Slavonic word, which isn't used anymore in any language, if I remember correctly. In Bulgarian, this would be ashte, right? But in Russian, this would be ashche. Ashche, plinf grecha. So ashche would be если. So if the plinfa, look at this, right? This uses the F and this uses the th sound. So it's not consistent. So plinf grecha. So if the stone or the ingot of sin, kto, svobod, who, free, отвергнет. Oh, that's a B. Wait, отбегнет. Отбегать. Like, so the person will run away. Отбегать. Бегать to run or run away. If they're free, they will run away from the brick of sin, right? So you have to avoid sin. Then we have prashcheyu. That's prashcheyu, so with a sling case. Molitv. So a prayer. Враги. So this looks like a B, but is actually a V. Враги побеждати. So побеждать is to win, right? And враги. So the interesting thing is that in Old Church Slavonic, враги or vrag, vragu, actually had two different meanings. First one was enemy. So if you looked at someone who was your enemy, on moj vrag, on moj vragu, right? But actually had a different meaning as well, and that was devil. And in Eastern Slavic, at least Russian, vrag nowadays only means enemy. But in Southern Slavic, so in Croatian, vrag means devil. So djavol, which is used in Russian, is not used in Croatian. Serbs do use it, which is interesting, right? They use djavol, while vrag in Russian only means enemy. So in this case, it could mean both devil and enemy. But prasheju malitv, so armed with a sling of prayer, right? Yeah, with a sling filled with prayers as ammunition, you can win from the enemy or from the devil. And then we have another meme. So this monkey, right? In Greek, or in Slavic, there's actually another letter that was used, and that letter is Ižica. Ižica represented three different sounds. It represented the sound U, which it represented in Greek. It represented the sound I and the sound V. So in Evangelie, we use the Ižica, right? It's a David reference. Exactly. It's David slaying Goliath. Perfect connection, Sergey. That's good. So, the thing is, Ižica was only written when it made etymological sense. So, for example, let me give you an example. Etymologia, right? So in Greek, there would be U here, right? So because there's a U there, what they did in Old Slavic is they used Ižica to indicate that the sound, eti, that it wasn't simply I. So what they did, it would make etymological sense. The thing is, that doesn't make any etymological sense. So what happened often was old East Slavic scribes didn't know if the Greek word had Ižica or U, upsilon, right? So they just added them sometimes, and if they liked it, they kept using it. It doesn't make any sense. So I asked Leonidas about this, and it turns out that monkey in Greek was pithikos, and monkeys, so the plural, would be pithikoi, right? Or in modern Greek, pithiki. So there's no Ižica there. So this form doesn't technically exist, but this means monkeys. So monkeys, biesi. So bies means demon in Russian. A perfect letter to look smart. Exactly. Nie imut. So they don't have. So monkeys, they don't have. Or pifiki, biesi, nie imut. Stružati. Stružati is an old Church Slavonic word, or Church Slavonic word for dokučać, which means bother, right? So these animals bother, and they have probably nothing better to do. Ni imut, they don't have. Last thing I want to say is that Ižica, actually, in modern Church Slavonic, this letter isn't really used. At least, well, it's used, but it has two different forms. And let me quickly explain that. So you have this form and this form. These are the two forms of Ižica that you can encounter. So this form, if it has two accents, it means that this is the letter E. If it doesn't have any accents, it's read like a V. So in the word Evangelie or Evangelie, you use this because there are no accents and it's not, it's not a vowel. That's just one important difference. Okay, guys, first stream we covered 7 words, then we covered 6, and now we covered 5, and we did this in 2 hours. Okay, that's a long time. So I think that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I talked a lot about like different things, but this is something that I love, so I love to share this passion with other people interested as well. Thank you so much for joining. If there are any questions, please leave a comment or say it now. Another sound mutation, yeah. So if there are any questions or you want to say anything, just leave a comment. I will try to answer it. Thank you so much for helping. Again, to Leo, thank you so much. Krzysz, thank you for Polish. A lot of different people. And I'm proud of you all. That's something I really want to say. And the next stream is probably going to be in like a few days. Спасибо вам большое и увидимся. Давайте, пока.